powerful message that President Biden has faith in the Ukrainian people and is unwavering in his commitment to stand by them. White House.
Yo, what up, y'all? It's your boy Rob coming back at you once again with another video. So before we get started, you already know what to do. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit the bell icon twice. Smash the like button, share this video out to all of your followers, and let's get it cracking. All right. So I don't know if anybody is aware, but apparently on Monday, February 20th of 2023, President Joe Biden made a secretive trip that's not so secretive anymore to Ukraine. And if you want to find out how much money he made it rain with when he went over there, you got to make sure that you watch the video all the way through to the end. All right. So now this is an article from The Hill. And what it says is how President Biden's secretive trip to Ukraine came together. All right. The White House alerted the press at 10:20 a.m. on Sunday that Biden would not be seen for the rest of the day. In reality, he had not even been in the building for several hours. Biden left his famous address at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue even earlier that morning to fly to Poland. He then reportedly took a train to Kyiv, where he arrived early on Sunday morning. It was a surprise trip to the capital city of war-torn Ukraine, roughly 1 year since Russian forces first launched an unprovoked invasion. The president's closely guarded travel was the product of months of planning that culminated with Biden standing side by side with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky and declaring the U.S. and the world would support Ukraine for as long as it takes to win the war. All right. And just remember and just understand what it is that Ukraine stands for and represents, and their recent complaints that they've been having in different places that they've gone to. And remember, that's what Joe Biden stands with. It was logistically complicated and difficult, and it sends an incredibly powerful message that President Biden has faith in the Ukrainian people and is unwavering in his commitment to stand by them, White House Communications Director Kate Bedingfield said of the trip. So again, understand that is very important, okay? Biden's trip to Ukraine was meticulously planned over a period of months. Deputy National Security Advisor John Feiner told reporters on Monday. A small number of officials from the National Security Council, the Pentagon, Secret Service, and the White House Military Office were involved in the planning, he said. The trip to Ukraine differed from past unannounced presidential visits to war zones like Iraq and Afghanistan because the U.S. does not have an established military presence on the ground there. The president himself made the final decision on Friday to proceed with the trip to Kyiv ahead of a previously announced visit to Warsaw, which is roughly 500 miles from the Ukrainian capital. Now, as many crises as we have going on here in the United States, President Biden decided to go overseas and make sure that the white nationalists in Ukraine understood that they have his 100% unmitigated support. Okay. So now here it says he got a full presentation of a very good and very effective operational security plan. He heard that presentation. He was satisfied that the risk was manageable, and he ultimately made the determination, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan told reporters. Sullivan said the White House notified Russian officials of the impending trip to Ukraine before Biden departed, though he did not give an indication of how Moscow responded to the heads up. Biden arrived at Joint Base Andrews and boarded Air Force One at 4 a.m. on Sunday, and the plane took off a short time later. After a refueling stop in Germany, Biden's plane landed in Poland. The New York Times reported Biden traveled by train to Ukraine, arriving at Kyiv at roughly 8 a.m. local time on Monday. The White House took significant steps to keep the trip under wraps until Biden arrived in Kyiv and to ensure his security once he arrived. Officials had in recent days brushed aside questions about whether Biden would cross into Ukraine during his trip to Poland, saying there were no plans for the president to travel anywhere other than Warsaw. Only 3 White House staff members traveled with Biden aboard Air Force One: Sullivan, Deputy Chief of Staff Jen O'Malley Dillon, and Director of Oval Office Operations Annie Tomasini. A 13-person press pool typically travels with the president, consisting of print, radio, and broadcast reporters, as well as photographers and a videographer. Only 2 reporters traveled with Biden aboard Air Force One: a single print reporter and a photographer, both of whom turned over their phones as a security precaution that is typical of unannounced presidential travel. Okay. A 2-person TV crew joined Biden's motorcade upon his arrival in Kyiv, and 9 more journalists were able to join for Biden's meeting with Zelensky at the presidential palace. While in Kyiv, reporters on the ground agreed not to share real-time updates on Biden's movement and locations, and details on how he traveled to and from the city were withheld until he was out of the country. Biden spent roughly 5 hours in Kyiv meeting with Zelensky, U.S. Ambassador Bridget Brink, and other Ukrainian officials. While there, Biden announced an additional $500 million in military aid for Ukraine and upcoming sanctions to further pressure companies and individuals supporting Russia's war effort. More broadly, he spoke about the importance of the U.S. and its allies continuing their support for Ukraine after a year that saw thousands of Ukrainians lose their lives in a brutal war. Themes he is expected to reiterate in a Thursday address from Warsaw. 1 year later, Kyiv stands, Biden said from the Capitol, and Ukraine stands, democracy stands. While here in the United States, we have places that are radiated with nuclear and toxic chemicals, as well as places like Jackson, Mississippi, and Flint, Michigan, that still don't have drinking water. We have President Biden dancing around in Ukraine. All right. So there was another article about this. Actually, 2 other articles about this, and both of those articles were published by Reuters. All right. And we're going to check those out as well. But the key takeaway from this is that Biden has pledged an additional $500 million in military aid for Ukraine. So for all of my people who are out there keeping track of how much money the Democrats have provided to Ukraine, make sure that you guys drop that dollar amount in the comment section. Biden walks through Kyiv to show resolve ahead of the war's anniversary. Again, mind you, this is why we have problems going on here in the United States that the Democrat majority government is not dealing with effectively. U.S. President Joe Biden walked around central Kyiv on an unannounced visit on Monday, promising to stand with Ukraine as long as it takes on a trip timed to upstage the Kremlin ahead of 1 year's anniversary of Russia's invasion. Biden, in trademark aviator sunglasses, and President Vladimir Zelensky in green battle fatigues walked side by side to a gold-domed cathedral on a bright winter morning, pierced by the sound of air raid sirens. Okay? When Russian President Vladimir Putin launched his invasion nearly 1 year ago, he thought Ukraine was weak and the West was divided. He thought he could outlast us, but he was dead wrong, Biden said. The cost that Ukraine has had to pay is extraordinarily high. Sacrifices have been far too great. We know that there will be difficult days and weeks and years ahead. Outside the cathedral, burnt-out Russian tanks stand as a symbol of Moscow's failed assault on the capital at the outset of its invasion, which began on February 24th. Its forces swiftly reached Kyiv ramparts, only to be turned back by unexpectedly fierce resistance. Now, here's my question. If it's going so good in Ukraine, why is the war still going on? Shouldn't they have ended it by now and kicked Russia out of there? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. The U.S. president promised a further $500 million worth of weaponry, including artillery ammunition, anti-armor systems, and air defense radars, plus tighter sanctions on Russia. Okay, so now again, my question is, how much money has the United States given to places here that are under crisis? You know what I'm saying? Let me ask you guys a question. We have several simultaneous crises going on here in the United States. What are some of them? You know what I'm saying? A lot of them, if you ask me, are the Republicans and Democrats working together to ship immigrants into black neighborhoods and bust up the black voting and political power there. That's one of the crises. Other crises are natural disasters like East Palestine with the radiation from the train explosion, Flint, Michigan, which has still not been touched by the United States. New Orleans is still recovering from Hurricane Katrina, you know what I'm saying? And nothing has really been done to help those efforts there. And Jackson, Mississippi still has issues with the drinking water, but that's not on Biden's priority list. The visit of the U.S. president to Ukraine for the first 15 years is the most important visit in the entire history of the U.S. and Ukraine relations, Zelensky said. Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba called the visit a signal to Russia that no one is afraid of you. Russia was notified before Biden's departure, officials in Washington and Moscow said, apparently to avoid the risk of an attack on Kyiv while he was there. The trip took place a day before Putin was due to make a major address on Tuesday, setting out aims for the second year of what he now calls a proxy war against the armed might of Washington and the transatlantic military alliance, NATO. Of course, for the Kremlin, this will be seen as further proof that the United States has bet on Russia's strategic defeat in the war, and that war itself has turned irrevocably into a war between Russia and the West, Tatiana Stanovia, a Russian political analyst, said. The anniversary has taken on more than symbolic significance, becoming what the West views as principal motivation for the war's deadliest phase, with Moscow hurling thousands of conscripts and mercenaries into a winter offensive. Russia has secured only scant gains so far in assaults in frozen trenches up and down the Eastern Front in recent weeks. Kyiv and the West see it as a push to give Putin victories to tout a year after he launched Europe's biggest war since World War II. Moscow received its own signal of diplomatic support on Monday, with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi expected for talks in public. China has remained neutral over the conflict, despite signaling a no-limits friendship pact with Russia weeks before the invasion. Washington has said in recent days it is concerned Beijing could begin supplying Moscow with arms. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said the United States was in no position to make demands of China. Now, let me ask you guys a question. Do you guys agree that the United States is in no position to make demands of China? If you guys agree with that, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. A diplomatic source who spoke on condition of anonymity told Reuters that Wang would discuss Chinese ideas for political settlement of the war. Ukraine says any diplomatic solution requires the withdrawal of Russian forces from its territory. Russia is trying to secure full control of two eastern provinces forming Ukraine's Donbass industrial region. It has launched assaults at locations running from Crimea in the north down to Volodya in the south, securing its biggest gains around the mining city of Bakhmut. Kyiv, which is absorbing a major influx of Western weaponry in the coming months for a planned counteroffensive, has lately stuck mainly to defense on the battlefield, claiming to be inflicting huge casualties on the assaulting Russian forces. Britain's Ministry of Defense said among Russian casualties were two elite brigades of thousands of Marines, probably rendered combat ineffective by losses sustained in failed attempts to storm Volodya. The Russian forces are likely under increasing political pressure as the anniversary of the invasion draws near, it said, predicting Moscow may claim to have captured Bakhmut regardless of the situation on the ground. If Russia's spring offensive fails to achieve anything, then tensions within the Russian leadership will likely increase. And that's interesting because I don't know if you guys are subscribed to Blacklight Revelations news, reviews, and reactions, but if you're not, make sure that you guys go over there and check out last week's episode, because in last week's episode, we talked about a bunch of Russian leaders that are just randomly disappearing. It seems like when it comes to the leadership in Russia, for whatever reason, those people can't stop themselves from finding themselves outside and falling down tall buildings. You know what I'm saying? So now here it says, in a sign of such dissent, Yevgeny Prigozhin, a Putin ally whose Wagner private army has sent thousands of criminals recruited from prison into battle around Bakhmut, accused unidentified officials of sabotaging his force by withholding weapons. Those who interfere with us trying to win this war are absolutely directly working for the enemy, he said, raising his voice and occasionally swearing in a 7-minute audio message. Such officials were eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner off golden plates and sending relatives on holidays to Dubai, he added. Western governments say Moscow has lost thousands of men and scores of armored vehicles trying to storm Volodya across fields scattered with landmines in sight of Ukrainian artillery. Inside Volodya, constant explosions shook the ruins. A pensioner emerged from the cellar where she lives with her dog and showed a Reuters journalist around a rubble of her flat above, where a shell had blasted through a wall. She said she'd been saved when the room was hit because a fridge had fallen on top of her. A neighbor's daughter found her and dragged her out. Scary is not the word. It's terrifying, she said. All right. So again, the key takeaway from this is that Biden, for one, decided to sneak over to Ukraine while the United States here is in peril. You know what I'm saying? There's issues that need to be addressed here. And what he did was pledged another $500 million in military aid to Ukraine. Biden promises new military aid for Kyiv during historic visit. So now let me ask you guys a question. Did you vote for that? Did you vote for your tax dollars to get pledged to Ukraine? Let me know what you guys' answer is for that. U.S. President Joe Biden promised new military aid for Ukraine worth $500 million during a surprise visit to Kyiv on Monday, almost a year to the day since Russia's invasion. A trip showing solidarity with Kyiv. Biden also said additional sanctions would be announced this week against the Russian elite and companies trying to evade sanctions to back the Russian war machine. The military aid package will include artillery ammunition, anti-armored systems, and air surveillance radars to help protect the Ukrainian people from aerial bombardments, he said. Freedom is priceless. It is worth fighting for as long as it takes, and that's how long we're going to be with you, Mr. President, as long as it takes, Biden told President Vladimir Zelensky after talks. So now let me ask you guys this question. Are you all okay with the United States helping the Ukraine, who is bordering with Russia, who Russia already has longstanding beef with us? Is this what people voted for when they voted for Biden? My question is for the people who voted blue, no matter who. Is this what you wanted for America? Let me know in the comment section, okay? Biden appeared to make no mention of fighter jets, which Ukraine has been seeking from Western allies to help it push back the Russian forces. Air raid sirens blared as Biden, who's 80 years old, walked with Zelensky through central Kyiv, but there was no reports of Russian missiles or airstrikes. The cost that Ukraine has had to pay is extraordinarily high. Sacrifices have been far too great, Biden told reporters. Describing the trip as historic, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba told both Biden and Zelensky were pleased with their talks and that a visit has sent a message to the resolve of Russia, which he called the swamp. The visit is the victory of the Ukrainian people and President Zelensky. It is a clear signal to the swamp that no one is afraid of you, he said. Visiting for the first time since Russia's invasion on February 24th of 2022, Biden said Washington would stand with Ukraine as long as it takes. Now, let me ask you guys a question. Is Biden speaking for Republicans, or is he speaking for Democrats, or is he speaking for both? And my question is, do you all agree? Does American people stand with Ukraine, or does the American established government stand with Ukraine? Let me know. He said his trip was intended to reaffirm our unwavering and unflagging commitment to Ukraine's democracy, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. Washington has by far been the largest supplier of military help to Ukraine. Repel better equipped Russian invaders. Kyiv expects a major new Russian offensive soon, and some military analysts say the offensive is already underway. The visit of the U.S. president to Ukraine for the first time in 15 years is the most important visit in the entire history of the U.S.-Ukraine relations, Zelensky said. Zelensky's chief of staff posted photographs of Biden in sunglasses walking side by side with Zelensky, who was wearing his trademark military-style clothing. Biden wore a blue and yellow striped tie. In the speech, Biden commended Ukraine's courage during the war, adding, "I knew I would be back." The air raid sirens wailed while Zelensky and Biden were at St. Michael's Golden Domed Cathedral on a square in central Kyiv, where the burnt-out Russian tanks have been placed. Biden's trip fell on the day that Ukraine marks the death of more than 100 people, now known as the Heavenly Hundred, at an anti-government protest that eventually toppled a Moscow-backed president in 2014. After visiting the cathedral, Biden and Zelensky laid wreaths at the wall of memory for Ukrainian soldiers killed fighting Russia. Several main roads in central Kyiv were closed off to traffic on Monday morning. Drivers stood waiting in traffic as gathering crowds of pedestrians peered over barricades to get a glimpse of who had come to the Capitol. All right. And as we all know, the person that came to the Capitol with his checkbook out was President Joe Biden. All right. So now here's my question. What do you all think about this? All right. Please make sure that you leave your opinion in the comment section. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit the bell icon twice, smash the like button, share this video out to all of your followers, and I will catch you all on the next video. All right. Peace.